So, welcome to Imperial Advisor. It is Thursday, the 3rd of January 2019. Today, we are going to be talking about the year just been. So, we're going to be going through 2018. We're going to look at a few different months, and we're going to basically discuss what actually happened during the year. In a slight change to usual, we're not going to have our beautiful mugs up on screen. So, you guys are going to miss out on that, but hopefully it will work out okay. So today we've got myself, Baz, we've got Justin, and we've got Owen. Say hello, guys.
Hello.
Hello, guys.
We're still in some experimental technical scenarios, so we're gonna keep working on that. So how do you guys feel about 2018 overall? Just maybe a quick summary. Good, bad?
Very strong first 6 months, somewhat weaker second 6 months.
Fair, okay. Justin, what do you think?
Yeah, tumultuous. I felt it was up and down quite a bit the whole way through. There was a lot of good, a little bit of bad, but mostly good, I think.
Yeah. For me, I'd definitely be similar. I'd say there were a couple of weird spells where we got very little news and it was kind of a comms block out. But when we did actually get stuff, it was pretty awesome. Right, let's kick over to January. January was a pretty interesting month. We were still working our way through the Imperial cycle. So we had gotten the packs. We were still kind of exploring it. It was still early days, so we'd finished up the getting the last few of them the month before. And for us, it was pretty big because the Irish Kotai down in Cork happens in January. So we were all down there playing games. And yeah, that was kind of the start of seeing Scorpion on the rise. Obviously, they had recently won the PAX Unplugged, I think, was it?
PAX South?
PAX South, was it? Chris Podorf had taken Scorpion to the top with some terrifying control. I'm not sure where to go from there. It happened.
It was beginning of the reign of terror of Fate Worse Than Death.
Yes.
And Chico, for that matter. But like Fate Worse Than Death's reign was long and, pretty punishing to almost everybody. It was interesting because back then I think everyone felt that Scorpion were probably the strongest, but Lion were still seen as a real competitor. And we thought Lion were going to come out of it very, very strong. And it turned out that they kind of came out fairly strong initially and then declined rapidly as time went on. Crane we weren't sure if Crane were any good really, but they started to have some decent showings. Crab were seen as quite strong. Unicorn were terrible, but that's nothing new. And Dragon were seen as being very solid.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I was just saying that there's a really interesting article to go back and have a look at. It was Kodo Hato talking about the state of the game just after WarpCon last year. Now this is almost a full cycle because at the end of this month we're going to be having that tournament again, and it's actually really interesting going back and seeing what he'd been talking about. He was breaking down the kind of what he felt were the key elements of a deck, talking about event control, attachment control. How can you deal with characters? Are you bowing them or killing them? Those kind of options. For him, he felt that Scorpion were really coming out ahead, that they had all the tools they needed to kind of hit those key elements, where a lot of the other clans didn't. I think, looking back, a lot of what he said was pretty good and was pretty on point.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it was a prescient article for sure. I think there had been kind of rumblings that Scorpion. We knew from pretty early on that Scorpion had tools to deal with pretty much everything, but I think those tools were so reinforced by the Imperial cycle that they were a complete clan with complete decks at a time when every other clan was still scrabbling to cover fairly significant holes in their strategies. But no, he was bang on the money, and Scorpion did dominate for the rest of the year.
Now, one of the things that also was happening in January was we were starting to get to see some of the store events. So at this point, we were still seeing the full Clan Champion promos, and the first of the Stronghold events. But this was slightly confusing because the initial one was storming the Stronghold or something similar, and then follow-up ones were Stronghold events. So I know myself, I think I made maybe 2 events in my local store. The Stronghold kits weren't relatively popular for some unknown reason. I know we have another one that we're going to try get done this month before we go into WarpCon to get a bit of practice. Eoin, you're in the same store as me. You have had a similar experience. Did you make it to any other areas?
Oh wow, Owen's disappeared.
Oh, if we lost him. Well, okay, Justin, you're down the other side of the country.
Yeah, I did actually. Not too many, but I did make it down to Cork a couple of times for the Stronghold kits, and yeah, they were. I mean, they were reasonably successful. And yeah, I traveled down a couple of times, 2 or 3 times throughout the course of the year. So I think the lure of full art pretty things is always going to be a draw for certain players. And I would certainly include my magpie nature among those. So I was, they were, yeah, I really enjoyed them. It was a great way to meet new players, like people you wouldn't normally, well, I mean, in fact, in some cases, people I'd never met before. So nice. That was absolutely the highlight, was, meeting people, kind of making new friends, getting to know a few new faces. Yeah, playing against people, losing, winning, having a good laugh. So yeah, overall, definitely very. I mean, for me, they were great. Like I really enjoyed them, I have to say.
And of course, the store situation is pretty fundamental. That's where you've got your basic players. So it's definitely a place where you need to build up from. And if there are issues there, then it can be really difficult to keep a environment, a group going of players. Some of the promos have been good. Some of them not so good. I've seen a lot of comments saying that some of the cards they picked out haven't been particularly playable.
No, I mean some of them haven't, and certainly anyone who's like looked at the Scorpion players getting key just absolutely staple card after staple card in full art format, whereas other clans have been getting just random jank. I mean, in fairness, if you are a unicorn, you only had random jank to pick from, in terms of early cards for full art choices. But yeah, it did seem a little bit random, and you would think that giving players or putting out cards that are kind of tournament or competitively staple would be something of a priority. But the other side of that argument is perhaps they thought they were putting out cards that were competitively significant.
Could be. And I have to say that the cards they picked out, the art has been pretty awesome on all of them, even if they weren't necessarily making the cut into decks.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's it's one of the things we've commented on before is just how good the quality of L5R art is in general. So it's very, very hard to pick a poor piece with regards to the game. It's something that FFG done a really fantastic job on. But yeah, but at the same time, it's like we're still getting kind of set cards in the Stronghold kits, and it's always exciting. Like every Stronghold kit is actually seeing what cards are going to be in it, seeing what cards you'll be able to get to bling out your deck if you want. Yeah, it still gets the blood pumping a little bit. So yeah, it's.
So how about for the crab, Owen? How were the promos at the store kits for the crab?
I still wanted to get some Eager Scouts. Haven't managed to get that one yet. I'm looking to some of them were good. I got some of the provinces were decent in terms of generic promos. Some of the clan specific ones weren't terribly exciting, but that's kind of the way it goes. I definitely think when they were organizing the OP, they probably weren't that sure what were the critical or the big cards yet, and that is always something that develops the player base, interacts with it. So that's normal. They've a much better chance of kind of figuring out what are the actual the must plays around this time now, when they've had a kind of year to watch how the game is actually played, rather than how they maybe thought the game was going to be played. It's an interesting one as well, because I was just thinking about this, because you could actually look at who was designing the game at what stage this year, because it went through some very distinct kind of design teams. Whereas it did.
You're right. You're right.
With the core set, you had 3 designers in there working on it, and a bunch of associate designers, everyone throwing ideas in, and different clans developed in different ways. Some clans worked out better than others. Scorpion came out really strong, Unicorn came out really weak, and everyone else was kind of in the middle. And then the first cycle, you have, I don't know how many people work on it. The second cycle, it was pretty much just Brad, and with an assistance from, I'm going to say Trevor, but it's not Trevor.
Tyler.
Tyler.
Yeah.
It was Tyler assisting, and then the new upcoming one, he said, is the first time he's really got a chance to design it himself. So you'll actually see kind of a very accelerated, let's go through different designers, let's see what their vision of AlphaVore is. So you can actually look back at it and say, actually, you see it going in slightly different directions as people work on stuff.
And
which is interesting.
Do you think the designers had much of an input in which cards were up for promos, or do you think that maybe it's a separate marketing area?
I would absolutely say that it was a separate area. That they probably went, look. I would say you'd be more likely to have your art director consulting in that, because if they're full bleeds, they're going to want, hey, let's do, that card looks cool. That looks like it could be a good full bleed. Let's do that as a full bleed.
That makes sense.
It's an unplayable coaster, but it's cool. Like they did the Hida Tominatsu as one of the crab full bleeds, and she's never seen any play ever, which is great art, and it's a great visual representation of the game. It's a diverse representation for the game, so all good from that point of view, but completely useless from a playability standpoint.
All right, well, hopefully they improve on that. I'm going to move us on to February, which was actually a relatively quiet month. We got some of the new fiction, giving us some background on why we were going to be battling through the Kotais. And I think that was pretty much it for February. Now, the fiction was pretty good. I certainly enjoyed it. And they gave a nice overview explaining why all the different factions were, kind of approaching things from a different direction. Then, in March, we got the 2-player playmat. I haven't actually seen this in real life. How about you guys?
No.
They're terribly expensive to ship, apparently.
Oh, okay.
They're ridiculously expensive to ship.
Because, I did ask my local store to, hold on to one when it comes in for me. But I don't think it ever came over.
I remember during Gamma one year, the shops were asking about them, like, why are they so expensive? And they're like, I know, they cost $45. That's how much it costs. And they were like, no, we mean just in terms of shipping. And they're like, okay, we'll have a look at that. And I think that might be a problem.
Okay. Keep an eye out then. Might be something that never actually made it over to our shores, and we need to look for it abroad. It was an interesting idea. It absolutely looks beautiful. Like, I did see some videos of guys playing on it, and it does really look fantastic. But I'm not sure it's something that you're going to be able to bring to a tournament and play there. Then in March, we also had Paris, which was one of the big Grand Kotais, hitting 3, 7, 8 players. I think it was actually the biggest Kotai we had in 2018, and it was a pretty fun one from the guys who were there reporting to me. And April was a big month for Justin because it had Disciples of the Void.
Yeah, the first clan pack. It was an exciting time for sure. So put up a big review of the whole pack, which took a while. Got most things right. Got a few things wrong, but such is the nature of reviewing cards. But Disciples of the Void dropped some hugely impactful Phoenix staples now. It gave us clarity of purpose. It gave us Karmic Twist, which sees limited play, but still sees play. And Tadaka. Did I mention Tadaka? But yeah, so
which cards did you get wrong?
Oh, hang on. I'd have to go. Oh God, I'd have to go back and look at it. Let me think. Path of Man.
Sure. Oh, did you say it was playable?
Yeah. I thought it really. Yeah, I thought it really would be.
Because that was one of the nice promos that I've still got a bundle of them here from the Phoenix event.
Oh yeah, and the fact that it was the first 4 influence card, which would seem to indicate that it was a genuine powerhouse, but the opportunity cost combined with the difficulty of just the opportunity cost made it very, very, very difficult to play. And in a deck that is as punishing on difficult to use cards as L5R is, I think it's just one of the things. It was just too much. But there were a couple of others, I'm sure. Shrine, I thought Shrine than it turned out to be. Apart from that.
Now, one of the big concerns about the clan packs was that the first clan to get a pack was going to become super dominant and was basically going to take over. That didn't happen, most disappointingly.
No, if anything, Phoenix seemed to get worse, bizarrely, after that. But yeah, I think it was just the game had become just the tempo of the game had picked up, and Phoenix had a naturally poor matchup in Scorpion, who were the best faction in the game.
Yeah.
So I think there were just a number of factors that came together against Phoenix. So, but that said, we've received cards in the meantime that have bolstered those weak areas, and now Phoenix is one of the stronger clans for sure.
Yes, and actually, it gave us a good example of how design we're looking to approach these clan packs, because a lot of the cards that Phoenix seemed to get weren't directly benefiting their primary deck. Now, there were a good chunk that were, if only because we were still pretty early on into the cycle. But I thought it was interesting that they were trying to pad out other deck types rather than immediately boosting the ones you had, which was nice. And we've definitely seen that again with the Scorpion pack.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I suppose with the Phoenix, they've introduced a new stronghold with each clan pack, which in itself opens up a whole range of new archetypes. And we've seen in both the Scorpion pack and the Phoenix pack that the support for the existing strongholds, really, there's very, very little there. I mean, the Phoenix pack had one terrible card, the attachment that gave you +1 glory.
Yeah,
I've even forgotten the name of it. It's that poor. And then the Scorpion pack had a couple of cards. It had the Alibi Artist, and maybe one other that just kind of just fit into the general plan. But again, very, very little that supports the established Scorpion control decks, or even their tempo decks. There's very, very little for City of the Open Hand.
Yeah.
But that's good. That's good. So I mean, again, maybe now that we've seen now that there's a new restricted list that further pushes kind of standard Scorpion control down, we will see Shinobi decks become more prevalent among
no doubt. Players. So, Owen, do you have anything to add to
that? Just that, I thought both the Phoenix and the Scorpion packs were interesting in that they mostly kind of expanded theoretically new decks. It gave it a lot of new fire to Phoenix, which was nice, but just because the bad Scorpion matchup, they didn't manifest, as Justin said. The Scorpion pack itself had some interesting cards, but it hasn't been ridiculously impactful. I don't think it's solidified Scorpion as way over the top. So yeah, it's interesting, certainly. Yeah, I mostly agree with Justin though.
And then we got some rules reference updates, some minor tweaks and some clarifications. We also got a bunch of guest writers in. So the FFG contacted a bunch of players in the community to write articles. And, some were good, some were okay. I don't think I could say that any of them were particularly poor. But what got me was it seemed pretty clear that FFG had realized they had a bit of a communications problem, that we were hitting gaps. And when, as I said, in February we had a little bit of new fiction, and in March, the Honored Duel playmat came out, and then it was Paris Kodai. But largely there actually hadn't been much communication from FFG. So that definitely felt like some good progress. Did you feel that also, Owen?
I think the communication FFG on pretty much all of their games has gone up and down according to some celestial movements that I find difficult to track. Actually, I don't. They have a tendency to go, okay, this is the game in the world now. This is our key game. We're going to put huge amounts of resources into it. And then, okay, now this next game is the real priority. So it feels like they work by running between, this is the most important game ever. Now this is the most important game ever. And when you're running a more kind of community-driven game, which requires a large player base to show up for tournaments, that can be frustrating because you kind of need to keep everything percolating at a low boil. So you need a constant churn of new information and things to cover, and they don't always do that. And I think that is to their detriment, or to their game's detriment. Maybe overall that's healthy, but I worry about the churn they engender by doing that. That they need to, keep drip feeding us stuff. Keep us make us feel like we're alive. You see at the end of the year with Keyforge happens, and then everything's Keyforge. And around the middle of the early part of the last year, you had Legion was the most important game, and then the X-Wing relaunch, and they kind of lots of big projects, lots of games, not a focus, but everything else kind of suffers for a bit, So yeah, I mean, there was actually FFG OP were tweeting during the week about what was your big memories of thing, and you were some salty Imperial Assault players on. So yeah, it's a mixed bag. I mean, I think if they kept it a little more consistent, everyone would be a lot happier. And the fiction kept coming, and we didn't. We found out all the stuff through their website or through their Twitter rather than in some more random places.
Well, it looks now that maybe they're beginning to get a bit more regular on it. We're definitely hitting seem to be regular Wednesdays, and hopefully they keep that up. The next thing that kind of came along in May was the Sword and the Spirits. So soon after the Phoenix Pack, we got the Phoenix Novella. And this, of course, is by Robert Denton III, or as many people know him as Spooky. This is obviously Phoenix, Justin, so you enjoyed the book, I hope?
Yes, I did. So basically it filled in some which had been missing. So basically, it introduced another family, a vassal family of the Phoenix, the Kaido family. And yeah, just basically delved into the relationship between Tsukune and Tadaka, which in old 5R, in the long ago, Tsukune was Tadaka's Yojimbo. So it's a relationship that has long standing in the lore. So seeing the two of them together again was great, always great. The novella also came with 2 full art promos, one of Fushikai, which is the Phoenix clan sword, and one of Kaito Kasori, who the daimyo of the Kaito clan. So it was great. The promos were absolutely gorgeous. But yeah, so there we go. Yeah, it was another product. It was another product.
We also got the multiplayer rules, which I gathered was a bit of a baby of Brad. So I have to admit, I haven't played it myself. I've certainly read through the rules a couple of times just to make sure I was familiar. A lot of the guys seem to be have enjoyed it when we were over at Birmingham. So players are out there and have been playing it and seem to have been enjoying it. Owen, have you tried it yourself?
No, but I watched a couple of people play it. I know it's being kind of modded and refined and improved. There's always been a market for multiplayer Alpha 4 and multiplayer games in general, so it's good to see that as an option. It'd be nice actually to have some sort of side event or something in the Kotais for that. It'd be nice if we could do something with that, just just for a different flavor for people or something that a different sort of play experience.
Yeah, and I do believe that they did do that for the most recent Kotais, because some of the players were commenting how it was a fantastic way to farm the Kaku, although I think in that particular case it had just been a slight misunderstanding on Cascade's part. I'm reliably assured we're not going to be able to farm it quite as efficiently once we make it to Cork.
Well.
Always the bridesmaid.
Yeah. Then we had a bunch of events in May. We had Warsaw, Dusseldorf, Atlanta, and San Francisco. Of particular note is we had the rules reference updated, and we got our restricted list. So this was a pretty big shakeup. The main target, at least to me, seemed to have been the Scorpion clan. A lot of the cards on the restricted list seemed to primarily focus at that one particular deck. And then there were a few additions just to round it out nicely to make sure that everyone had at least something. I have to admit, I have really, really enjoyed the addition of the restricted list. I think it's been a fantastic addition to it. And because any time it comes out, it definitely feels like it shakes up the game a little bit. How do you think about it, Justin? Has it been treating you nicely?
It's a bit of a mixed bag. I think the first restricted list, looking back on it now, was actually something of a failure. I have to say. I mean, Scorpion had taken over the environment, had taken over the game at this point, and the restricted list was, at least in part, or in some part, and quite in a greater part, meant to restrict Scorpion. But unfortunately, Scorpion had just better cards to fall back on, while the broad-ranging approach that the restricted list took affected other clans significantly worse. Like Lion, who were starting to slip by this stage, were hit really hardly were hit quite badly by the restricted list. Whereas probably the two strongest clans at the time, which were Dragon and Scorpion, despite having quite significant cards placed on the restricted list, it didn't really slow them at all. Phoenix took a huge hit from the restricted list because like half the Phoenix conflict deck was on that list. I mean, which is entirely fair, but that also knocked Phoenix back a bit again when they looked like they were getting ready to mount a serious challenge on kind of the first place, or at least the top tier. But for me, overall, I think the first restricted list was actually something of a failure. It did take out an awful lot of the most powerful cards in the environment, but those cards were being played by almost every clan. So it just depowered the environment in general a bit, and certain clans like Scorpion, like Dragon, just had better cards under the surface to replace those with, or kind of like just the next tier down, the cards that like weren't quite making the cut. And so, if anything, the restricted list really solidified Scorpion's grasp on the environment. I think Crowd were doing very well at this stage as well. I think the most recent restricted list, although we've yet to see tournament, we've yet to see quite a bit of any significant tournament data, but it seems like a much more carefully thought out and curated that is intended to break up specific deck types and rein in some of the more generically powerful areas within certain clans. I mean, the restricted list, I think it's absolutely a vital tool, but for me, the first restricted list was more of a failure than a success.
So we definitely did discuss it in depth when it came out first, and I think one of the big topics that we got into on that particular episode was what the purpose of the restricted list. because we could definitely see how the restricted list could be used to try shift the environment, to add a bit of balance to it, because the Scorpion quite clearly were the primary target. But at the same time, they were also adding in a couple of cards where you're like, why are they worrying about Lion? You know, I mean, for greater glory, sure. And charge, okay, but you know, are they kind of key parts of the Scorpion deck? Maybe not. So the argument behind those particular combinations of cards were that they were perhaps overpowered effects that maybe, you know, were slightly imbalancing when they kind of correctly came off, or adding random elements. So from that perspective, they were trying to tackle specific situations or card combinations that they felt were problematic. And I suspect what actually happened was that they started off going, let's deal with Scorpion, this is the right time to get in, but while we're at it, let's establish a baseline and make sure that everyone is on it, and you know, address some powerful combinations we think are problematic, even if they aren't necessarily winning games for those clans. And then when they tried to do everything exactly what you said happened, we just kind of depowered the game as a whole and the environment. Did it help? Did it hinder? I know not having political debate when you're facing it off against, you know, kind of key cards, like that may have been one of the reasons that Crab started to drop after that. They had been using political debate of all cards to defend, to take out key elements.
Yep, absolutely. Like I think the cards like Charge and For Greater Glory, those are cards that, you know, I remember when God, ages before the game even came out, when Charge was previewed, and every one of us just screamed, this card is busted, and this card is going to be a big problem further down the road. And yeah, I mean, you know, any card, like cards like Charge and cards like For Greater Glory, that can fundamentally break the economy of a game, you know, they do need to be curtailed, because they can create really unfun and unenjoyable kind of just situations, play experiences. And so, yeah, no, I think I completely agree. I think they were setting down a baseline with, you know, the restricted list is going to be a tool for, partly for balance and partly for fixing cards that get through that maybe or unintended or interactions. So, so yeah, I mean, what was it? Unicorn and Crane escaped the first restricted.
Kind of. The Unicorn had been playing For Greater Glory.
Yeah, they had no clan specific cards, but they did get hit by, you know, by proxy. They got you know, there was a bit of collateral damage from the other clans that did have cards. But yeah, overall, like, restricted list definitely a good thing. And I think as they've gone on, I think the designers have kind of honed the effect of the restricted list and kind of keyed in on what they want it to do, and using it more as a proactive tool rather than a reactive.
What was your experience with it, Eoin? Especially now that you've managed to get Charge and Iron Mind back into your decks.
My first view was pretty much as Justin said. This is an attempt to pull everyone back, and I wasn't sure it was going to do what they wanted it to do because of that. I think actually, in some ways, they could have done a restricted list half the size and just banned Charge, and kind of just gone deal with it. I don't know if that was the right call or not, but I would have been tempted to do that, because half of the cards on there, like For Greater Glory, was on there because of Charge, and Iron Mine was on there because of Charge, and a number of cards were on there just because of Charge. And I think that was the core they were trying to fix, and it just turned out that playstyle alterations, people moving more towards, you know, playing lots of conflict characters, especially as the second cycle comes out, that kind of dealt with Charge, or it didn't. Well, it kind of de-emphasized some things and emphasized some other ones, and we get to a different a different meta arises out of this restricted list. I'm not sure what would have happened without it. I think it calmed some nerves which is actually what they wanted to do. And it kept attendance strong, confidence in the game reasonably strong going into June and July.
And it always, like, every time we get a new restricted list or changes to it, it kind of shakes things up a little bit. And it gives us a little bit of reassurance that the designers are paying attention to what's happening and are making changes. So the next month, obviously, is June. For us, the Birmingham Kotai UK Games Expo was a big deal. There was also Melbourne, Origins, Bologna, and Seattle. So there were a lot of events. The big one for me was this was the first time that Dragon finally managed to sneak in a win, with Anil getting it on the 15th, and then another Dragon player taking Bologna on the 16th. So obviously I've got my opinions being a Dragon player, but what do you guys think about the poor performance of Dragon up to then, and indeed since then, if you take out Anil?
I think Dragon have kind of they have so many really powerful flips, and I think they had relied really heavily on Neaton Master in kind of a bullying character to come out. And it's not until they pick up a second monster expensive character to bully people with that they really started to put a lock on the game, and that was Mitsu. And I think they had ludicrous high roll games where they were like, okay, cool, I make a Neaton Master, you don't have an answer to him, I put on some weapons and I just keep straightening him and ruining your turn for 2 turns, and then another one comes out. And I think that was a really, really, really good deck when Neaton Master was out, and it was a decent deck when it wasn't. So I think that was the main issue that they had, and the additional consistency they got, the additional bits of card draw, the additional tools, a very powerful removal action, Void Fist. That's when Dragon really become obnoxious.
And Origins and Bologna actually didn't have Mitsu or Void Fist. They were just a week before that. What do you think, Justin? What's your opinion on Dragon? How do you find the Dragon matchup, actually?
I find the Dragon matchup comes down most of the time to when you flip their restoration of balance. I hate to say it, but I mean, as Owen was saying, in the early days, if they got their early Neaton Master and then they got Pathfinder's Blade down, you could very rapidly find yourself losing 2 provinces in a turn with really no comeback because you had a straightened Neaton Master across the board from you on massive skill totals. And yeah, I mean, in those games, you could just get blasted out of it by Neaton Master on his own. But certainly, I've found that it's when you hit restoration is the really big deal.
Yeah.
It's if you hit it turn 1, it's not too bad. If you hit it on your first conflict in turn 2, it's a catastrophe. It's one of those things. Certainly in my experience playing Dragon, if you hit their provinces in the right order, they fold really, really easily. And if you hit them in the wrong order, you just lose, and that's it. And there's no comeback. So if that bears out, and if that is actually anything more than just anecdotal, well, I wouldn't even call it data, but if it's anything more than anecdotal, then you are in a position where a lot of Dragon's success or failure is going to come down to the random flip of cards, just the order the cards are flipped in.
Yeah.
And that is not conducive to getting through like a large tournament and winning large tournaments.
Yeah.
Like you absolutely have outliers like Anil, who is quite simply a machine and knows the clan inside and out, like knows the deck inside and out, knows the matchups inside and out. So he will always make the right decision. And so, a player who's put in that amount of time is always going to, ameliorate the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is going to be significantly better for those players than it is for someone who hasn't put in the time. put in the time, put in the effort. So yes, I mean, a good player who puts in time, knows the deck. That player is going to be a huge, huge force, and someone that's very, very difficult to defeat, as Anil has proven himself to be.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it's interesting that you both brought up what essentially are two random elements. So the getting the right province flip, and obviously it's not just restoration. We had feast or famine before, and the
Feast or famine was in there as well. Yeah,
the dragon row still is pretty terrifying with Seeker of Void. But also the Knitting Master, that opening burst turn, if you could get it, could be quite devastating. But both, to an extent, I think, kind of intermediate level dragon players were maybe relying overly much on these kind of random elements and weren't fully getting to grasp with the full kind of potential that the dragon deck has in there. My own personal take and opinion, and I certainly do not play anywhere near as well as I'd like to with dragon, is that dragon is all about knowing the opposite matchup, shutting down those options, and then relying on fantastic dynasty cards, and then just holding onto your board as long as you can. But yeah, I've written articles on that. People can go look it up, or check out whatever Neil is saying currently. Importantly, we then lead into July, where we came with the elemental release cycle. Again, this was another 6 packs in 6 weeks. It had started in June, but had finished up in July. So for July, we had the Los Angeles and the Houston Kotais, but obviously the big takeaway was the elemental cycle packs. Personally, I loved this cycle. There were some duds. There were some really fantastic cards. I might be a bit biased. Obviously, Mitsu and Void Fist are fundamentally game changing for Dragon. I was a little disappointed by Yoritomo, I have to admit. He looked very exciting, but just didn't make the cut.
Yeah, it was a real shame, especially for all the Mantis players, because Yoritomo is always. I mean, in old 5R, Yoritomo was a full-on cult of personality. Like the Mantis clan were a cult of personality, and that personality was Yoritomo. He had that incredible artwork. Mechanically fine, whatever, but just the artwork, and then the person, like the character himself, the attitude, he was the consummate pirate. He was just a magnificent bastard, and even as someone who playing a clan who fell foul of the Mantis in the story a number of times, you couldn't help but admire Yoritomo. And was it at Gen Con in 2000 when at Oblivion's Gate, when they were everywhere they'd stop between rounds to tell stories about what was happening with various very important characters in the story, and when they read the death of Yoritomo, like there wasn't a dry eye in the house. It was amazing, and it was just he was such a huge part of old 5R's lore, that to see him get shortchanged mechanically in the game was a big letdown. So, but that said, they can always do an experienced version or just another version with who kicks ass and is amazing. Fingers crossed that the real Yoritomo is coming someday soon.
And the characterization for him in the story has been fantastic so far. So, Owen, what was your elemental cycle like?
Elemental cycle is the start of a big argument now, because this is the point where all of a sudden people realize, hang on, the element role you have is now incredibly important. And because this is the bit where people actually start to go, hang on a second, we've been voting on what we're picking all season, and now this card's coming out and that card's coming out. Was anyone else voting for Seeker of Earth? Please tell me no one was voting for Seeker of Earth. You can revisit my rant on specialized defenses.
What are we doing?
Yeah, exactly. So this is, you can revisit this one. This is a design space concept that they were very enamored of, because they've spoken several times about how much it's marvelous, and basically when you just change roles every 9 months or whatever, all of a sudden a bunch of new cards become available for your deck, and they're a big fan of the concept. But this is going to have big repercussions as time goes on in terms of how many critical cards, and the despair that hit the crab camp when we didn't get a water roll out of Gen Con. And this is the start of actually a bit of bitterness from the player base about role locking and people not having the role they want to build the deck they want.
Yeah, so this brings us into August and Gen Con and the Toshi Rambo Kotai series results. So yeah, people, we had some role changes at this point. So coming up to Gen Con, it was announced that the way roles were working was going to be changed, because originally we were expecting to get the Gen Con role for basically,
it was a weekend. It was literally for Worlds Weekend. You had a second role.
Yeah, that's what it was.
And then it was going to be a new role after that, and everyone started to freak out.
And it completely changed it around, because one of the things that had been happening was some of the Dragon players, certainly not all, had been hate drafting against the Phoenix.
Yes.
And we were in the Dragon. Were then suddenly going, wait. We're gonna get what for how long? Backpedal. Okay.
Yeah. But in the end, it didn't matter. So
exactly. So yeah, I mean that I think was a really good change that they made. I know a lot of players, when we first kind of talked about roles, and then once we started getting some more of the elemental cards. Personally, to an extent, you're always limited in the cards you can play. There's rules to the game. You're picking a faction. There's always some sort of limitation, and that's part of the fun of the game. But the role locking and people only having one role definitely stuck in the craw of some players. So I definitely like the idea of having two rather than one, because it certainly opens up things, but not so far that it's going wild. Now, one of my concerns that still really hasn't been addressed, partially, was that the top clan got to pick their role first. But then that's been slightly lessened by the fact that the players in the elemental events will get to vote, and at that stage there's no competition. So I guess we should be seeing every clan going in with their favored role every Worlds.
Indeed, which sort of makes a mockery of the whole idea of things in the first place.
I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I've ranted about this before. And
that's true.
Yeah. So on one level, on one level, I completely understand why. On another level, I have no idea why. But it's just the way it is. So.
All right, let's take us away slightly from the from the card game, because August was also the release of the RPG Beginners box. Now, obviously, we focus a lot on the card game. The card game is pretty central to the Alpha Vor experience, but there's so much more in this. Obviously, there's a fiction, there's stories. I'm looking at Battle of Rokugan sitting on my shelves right here, and we also have the RPG. So the RPG's first opener was this beginner's box. That was an introduction to role-playing for 3 to 5 players. Now, I picked it up. I haven't had a chance to run it, but I definitely do plan to at some point. And I have really enjoyed going through it. There is a ton of backstory and lore and unexpected snippets all the way through it. Owen, you're an avid role player. Did you get a chance to run it yet, or have you at least picked it up? I have
not had a chance to run it yet. My hope, pardon me, my hope is to actually get a chance to to try it out in the next little while. I'm running Cthulhu at the moment, run through Masks and Nyarlathotep, so I'm hoping after that to try it out again. I'm really looking forward to the adventures they've announced, though. I really want to give the Shadowlands one, the one set in going into Haruma Castle, a go. I've had a look at the rules. There's a rule that I can't find in the book. Someone said at some point that basically one of my complaints was you can't die to being hit by a Tetsubo.
Okay.
And someone said no. There's a rule where if it reduces it to 0, it gets bonus deadliness, so you're more likely to die. And I was like, cool. I cannot find that rule. I've looked through the book 3 times. I cannot find it.
Okay.
So if anyone knows which page that rule is on, let me know and I'll go take a look. But yeah, that was one of my complaints about it. It's interesting. Because I was involved in the playtest, and when I was running it, I found it was weirdly formal in some ways that were slightly counterintuitive, but they've toned that right down in the actual release, which is nice. Because it was a bit... And this whole thing of your rolled initiative, you got a bunch of stuff happen because you rolled well in your initiative, depending on whether you were earth or fire or air, water, stuff happened. And then immediately someone draws a sword, you have to roll initiative again. And then people just... It was like, no, you've started a debate scene, so now let's roll initiative. Okay. You get this information, you get this information, you get this information. The information you get is the person's got a sword behind his back. Okay, well, I draw my sword. I said, okay, well, that's escalated to a skirmish. Let's roll initiative again because it's a different initiative system.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, yeah. But they've toned that down, so that is good.
And actually, on that, they did run a playtest for it, an open playtest, which, if anyone hasn't had a chance to check out the book themselves, the open playtest is still up there, and there have been improvements since, but the kind of core of it is up there. I really like that. I like the fact that they were willing to go through it and take feedback and make changes. And I know there certainly were people who had opinions, and some of those opinions were rightly ignored, and a lot of them were taken on board. And I think the community managed to get a lot of good improvements through. And yeah, so I mean, I love the RPG. It is. I've played earlier versions of it, and I think it's a fantastic game. One of the other things that came out around this time was the Tiger Stalks His Prey story. So this was Toturi and the Emperor having a discussion with each other. If you haven't read it, you definitely should, because it is essentially setting up what seems to me to be the entire plot for the rest of this year. What did you guys think of that story?
Huge fan of that story.
It was Dave Latterroot, wasn't it?
It was, and I think honestly that's my favorite story so far in the new edition, because there's a lot of layers to it, and there's so much potential that spins out of it. Like, Dave Latterroot is very experienced with it. He's got a great grasp of the setting, and that's fantastic. But it's this amazing story in terms of stuff being set up. Like, this is the dominoes all being put in place, but you're not sure which way they're going to fall, because he's just setting up stuff, and there's an ambiguity to it. And what is Toturi doing, and what is he going to do? And like that's the bit.
I'm really excited to see how FFG and the story team decide to run with this and take it forward, because yeah, it's definitely very, very exciting times. Because obviously the story is a big thing for us. It's one of the major kind of differentiators of this game from every other card game out there, and the setup that they've put is definitely going to give players some great opportunities to make decisions and change things. Any further thoughts on that, Justin, or before we move on to the amazing September?
No, it was it's an absolutely fantastic story. When people talk about webs of deceit and kind of webs of politics in L5R, I can think of no other story in the history of the game, New 5R or Old 5, which better epitomizes that than this story. It was genuinely superb. It's one of the high marks of Five Rings story writing. Absolutely brilliant.
And on that high,
Yeah, absolutely. And just again, like the story team have done an incredible. They really have.
That's true. It's very, very true. And on that high, let's move us into September. So September at Keyforge, yay! Which is totally mean of me, but essentially September was a bit of a quiet month from the FFG front. They started the previews for Underhand of the Empire, which released in October. So October is really where we're looking at the moment. This was the Scorpion clan pack. And the Phoenix clan pack had a certain amount of excitement and didn't change things much. I think the Underhand of the Emperor kind of doubled down on that. The focus in the Underhand really seemed to be on the Shinobi side, which as a deck is still developing. And we're kind of looking forward to some cards coming out in Children of the Empire before I think that really kicks off. Any thoughts on it yourself, Justin?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we were afraid of obviously, this must have been a long time in advance, because the last clan you would bring a clan pack out for at this, having after basically a year of Scorpion dominating the entire tournament scene, would be a clan pack for Scorpion. So that was a bit unfortunate in terms of just the timing. But yeah, the fears that it may have further solidified Scorpion strangleholds on the tournament scene were pretty much unfounded.
Yeah,
there was very little in here for the established Scorpion deck. Mostly Shinobi focused stuff. A stronghold, a really interesting stronghold actually, which very interesting. Like Tony, Tony, he wrote some articles ages and ages ago. Yeah, so he's been playing the new stronghold almost exclusively on Jigoku mainly, and in the shop as well. And he has a 100% record against City of the Open Hand so far.
Oh wow! That's really
good. Which is really surprising. So this is something that just kind of random card design talk, but there's kind of like there's external balance and internal. And for example, like in Phoenix, one of the reasons that you cannot play a Shigenja deck out of the Sawamori Seido is that if you meet a Shigenja deck played out of Kyuden Isawa, you're going to lose because they can recycle their Against the Waves, and so on that basis alone, you've just lost the game. So there's an internal balance element to how clans work as well. And I mean, obviously, you can see that Isawamori Seido, that there are an awful lot of cards coming through that are courtiers, and that is like Isawamori Seido is going to be the courtier box for Phoenix when that deck finally arrives. So just as a note that regarding with the Scorpion, that the Kyuden Bayushi seems to be, at least going from Tony's play data, seems to have a significant advantage over the City of the Open Hand, just in terms of tempo. They're just the tempo they can generate. So it's really interesting. So I'm very, very interested to see now once the Shinobi decks do become stronger and do become, I think, strong enough to hold their own in general competition, whether Kyuden Bayushi will actually put a stranglehold on City of the Open Hand and force it. So that's going to be something to look for anyway. But yeah, as I said, the cards in Underhand are they're for different decks. They don't support any of the established Scorpion archetypes. So yeah, hats off and good work by the designers.
Yeah, definitely a success from the design team. The other thing that came out in October was the actual main RPG book. I know we've talked a little bit about the RPG, so I'm not going to dwell too much on it. But one thing that I have to admit is reading through the skills and the merits and flaws in the RPG book has been absolutely fantastic, because they've got these little small sections that are kind of bits of background from the story and characters doing stuff. So it's kind of all of that flavor text that old players are missing from the current LCG have been taken up and put into little sections in the core RPG book. So if you haven't had a chance yet, it's definitely worth having a look through it and having a quick read of. We also in October got another spooky story, and that's a story by Mr. Denton again. So did he, in the old days, did he write a few other Halloween stories? Because I think this is the second.
Used to do Halloween stories, yeah. Well, they used to do a Halloween story in Elfavor, which would be something traditional and kind of spooky, often with a ghost involved. And it was a really nice spooky story. It's like, Spooky is a really good writer, and he puts together a lovely little atmospheric story that kind of tells a complete little arc, and you kind of see up, and then you see it coming, and think, you read that, that's it, and that's the nice little thing of it. So it's the really, really nice little piece, perfectly formed. I was very happy to read that.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to that becoming a regular thing. I'm definitely hoping that we'll see another Halloween story from Spooky next year. We also started getting letters from the champions, which I really, really enjoyed. So the idea of this essentially is that every player who was going to the Winter Court in November got a letter from the champion. Obviously, it's the same letter that every player gets to read, but just saying, we're doing this. This is why we're doing it. You need to get out there and take it for the team. Which definitely was reminiscent of of some of the old letters from the champions, or kind of summaries that used to go kind of directly to people who had signed up as one clan or another and then didn't normally get shared around. So I know that I definitely enjoyed the dragon one, but the crab one was hilarious. It was really blunt and to the point. It was like, here's a problem, you know what to do, get it done.
Cassad it, I wasn't elected to. I was elected to lead, not to read. No, it was. They were fun because they were very thematic of their own clans, which is a good thing, because you can, if a player's kind of going, I'm not sure what I should play or what clan's for me, you can show them that and go, that's an example of how that clan views problems. Have a read of it, and it will appeal to different people, and that was funny. It was interesting because one of the old things, the old game, was that people who'd served in the military in America tended to get drawn to two clans. The foot soldiers tended to play crab, and the intelligence guys tended to play scorpion. Because it was funny, because we used to have, like, the scorpion list would be like, okay, don't talk about where you're deployed. So it's funny from that point of view. But yeah, that's always there. There's always been kind of preferences in the clans, and it should come out in the clans media and material, so you can read it and go, yeah, that's my clan. Awesome.
Right, and then obviously that led us into the Winter World Championship, which was in November. We did a bit of coverage on this. It was a pretty big event as far as I was concerned, and obviously at the end of the day, Eric managed to take that for the crane. But my God, the competition on those tables was fierce. We were seeing, the year before obviously was quite cool and was quite big, but I think at that point players hadn't really kind of fully grasped how to play the game, and I think things have really changed since. And that particular tournament had some fantastic players throughout, the kind of top 64 and probably a bit down. Yeah, that entire event I think was certainly impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you consider the we've talked about it before, just the cognitive load involved in playing a game of 5 rings, when you are playing against players who will ruthlessly and completely punish even the smallest mistake, the smallest sequencing error, playing to that kind of level over that number of rounds, over that number is that's quite something. And yeah, you could see it. You could see it in the games that were played. Just the quality, the traps that were being laid. Yeah, it was something to watch.
Yeah, and I got to say, I did have the pleasure of playing against Eric in Cork, and then I guess I probably took about a 12-month break. But I know Eric
You were
continued.
that traumatized, were you?
Yes, very much so. In fact, the game after was a blur because I was so disorientated and damaged. But he kept playing because I ended up judging a couple of tournaments, throughout the year, and I saw him at pretty much all of the tournaments that I went to, and I know he was at many of the tournaments I did not attend. So he just kept playing and playing and playing. And then he was also doing many of the online Discord games, which are a great way to get practice, and playing and playing and playing. So, I think he essentially played L5R consistently, regularly for, those 7 or 8 months, and it paid off. And I think we've got a lot more players now who've put in that time. And yeah, December brought us more rules updates. So again, we hit a new restricted list. So I think we've kind of covered that in brief. We also had the start of the Kunshu Kotai series. So we had PAX Unplugged, we had Madrid, we had the Create a Card series of posts. What did you guys think of that? How did you feel that came out, Eoin, the new unicorn?
I liked it a lot, actually. I thought that it was nice the unicorn won it because they needed the help, and I thought it was actually a fun exercise for the community. I'm sure people get very exercised about what got picked. I think it was generally worked out fairly well. I like the fact that they left the skill and cost blank so they could kind of tailor the card.
Yeah.
So I'd say it's largely going to come out the way it looks like it's going to come out, which is nice. Like a little bit of it was community involvement without going down a chain of events that leaving you out of a mantis who's a kenku, a pirate, and a ninja.
Yeah. So yeah, Justin, were you worried about how that was going to go?
No, not remotely. The designers had complete control over every aspect of it, so it was absolutely fine. Like it's nothing silly like an elephant being named an imperial diplomat or something like that. So no, absolutely no problems whatsoever. And as Eoin said, leaving the cost and stats blank was great because you could balance out, because obviously there were abilities that were better and more powerful than other abilities. So so it again gives the designers a bit of leeway in terms of balancing out the card, and it also takes a bit of pressure off people having to, or people feeling compelled to try and min-max a card completely, as opposed to picking something that's maybe a little bit more flavorful. Because I think the ability that won isn't the ability that won that she honored when you play a Gaijin card.
Yeah. Yep.
That was the one that was chosen, right?
There
was another one, but there was another one which allowed you to take a look at the top 5 cards of your deck and put a Gaijin card into your hand.
Yes.
Which was blatantly more powerful.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't Gaijin. It was a Gaijin or non-unicorn card.
Gaijin or non-unicorn card, like that ability is ridiculous. That's like a stupendously, but it didn't make it through. So I mean, whether or not that's people sabotaging the unicorn clan, but yeah, certainly kind of it's a much more flavorful card for that, and then the cost and stats can reflect the maybe slightly less powerful nature of it. So I thought it was a great success. I thought the one area where it did fall down was the art, because there was a clearly stunning piece number 1. I think it was actually, I thought the one that was probably most flavorful was probably the least conventionally attractive piece of art. But yeah, it got I can't remember, was it a Wibisono piece, or was it?
It was Wibisono.
Was it a Drew? It was a Wibisono, yeah.
There was a Drew piece and there was a Wibisono piece. The Wibisono piece.
Yeah, stiff competition there. I
mean,
both would be amazing. But yeah, I thought it was a great kind of community exercise. A lot of fun, got people involved, got people talking, and I really hope it's something that they continue.
Yeah, more activity like that is pretty good. It's also an easy way for them to generate more content that is something to look forward to, that players get to see turn up every week, and being able to kind of interact and do stuff is certainly nice. One of the other things that came out in December was the Emerald Empire book. I've heard good things about it. I can't make much comment because it actually hasn't made it as far as here yet. I think I mentioned already, we had the start of the Khonshu Kodai series, so we had PAX Unplugged, and we had Madrid, and we have started kicking into the previews of Children of the Empire now. So that's been an entire year. That's been a lot. Like we've added a lot of new cards. So obviously the first cycle was at the end of last year, but we've added the Elemental cycle, we've added the Scorpion pack, and we've added the Phoenix pack. So it's obviously not as many as the kind of first few months when the core came out, and probably going to be a lot more cards turning up next year as well, because we're going to get the deluxe probably in February at this stage. We know it's not going to make January in time for Phoenix or WarpCon, unfortunately. Probably beneficial for me at least, because it means I don't have to pester Anil to go update copy of test. But yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of things happening this year, even if it's kind of felt like we've had things a bit quiet. One thing I do want to have a quick look through though is tournaments. Yeah, Scorpion. Obviously, Scorpion were pretty dominant in much of 2018. Obviously, they didn't win everything. They did win a good chunk of what they did. But if you look through the top 4s, top 8s, top 16s, they definitely feature a lot. Now, I know Mark Armitage had been asking for us to have a look-see at what actually has been happening insofar as tournaments. And up right, this is kind of what's been happening. It's a bit of a jumble. It's a bit of a mess. But one of the questions that people have been asking is, has there been much of a shift in clan loyalty? Or is it a case that we're seeing the same clans? As Scorpion are dominant, are we seeing Scorpion players increase and we're seeing other players decrease? Line, for example, hasn't been faring particularly well. Have those line players been dropping off? And I think that really it hasn't. So a bit of a mess here, but there's a couple of kind of peaks and troughs. There are areas where, like Phoenix had a jump for the Dusseldorf Kotai, and then Dragon had a peak just at the Origins Kotai. The Crab peak looks like it was actually at Cork. There were a massive number at Cork, but largely you're kind of seeing. You're seeing regional variations. You're seeing days when a particular area just turns out to have more than another area. Yeah, so obviously there were a couple of situations where you had kind of peaks and troughs for different clans, but for the most part, I think it was roughly even. Now, obviously, some of the clans started lower than others. Unicorn definitely have fared relatively poorly, but hopefully that'll kind of slowly improve.
Yeah.
So, what do you guys?
I think one thing, just a quick note on clan loyalties, is that when the changes in the Kote structure were announced, when they briefly made the Kote structure a single day tournament of 6 rounds, with people going 6-0, getting Hatamoto and no one else, you can see a significant jump in Scorpion support in the last short while, and I think that's something that would have fractured clan support quite a bit. Some people are always going to stick with their clan, but that kind of Kote structure does push people toward the best clan, or the clan that gives you the best chance of going 6-0. And now that that's been reverted, which I think is a very, very good idea and a good decision, then you may see things start to balance out a bit.
Yeah, so the last two would have been PAX Unplugged and Madrid, and yeah, you can definitely see Scorpion are definitely improving around that, and actually you can see Crane are doing quite well as well in the percentages.
Yeah, and the restricted list as well may have.
But even with that, yeah, I mean,
it.
even with that, the shifts haven't been too much percentage-wise. You were still seeing a majority. And I do think that at the top level, like the serious competitive players, while there are a few that are kind of switching between clans as needs be, I think the amount of time and work it takes to really become familiar with a clan, it encourages clan loyalty. Now, obviously, if you're currently playing Lion or I guess Unicorn, if you're playing one of the ones that are definitely doing quite poorly, and you want to be winning events, that's kind of a case where you might be worth cutting your losses and then moving over to one of the dominant clans and then learning how to play those. That said, now that those Hatamoto changes have gone into effect, the encouragement to stick to clan, I think, is there, because for me at least, making Hatamoto is far more important than winning. All right, what do we think about the future? Is the future bright? What's the state of this nation?
Well, I think we're going to see quite a significant drop in tournament. Like the 1 year honeymoon is over, and as is the FFG way, they bring games, and people move on to new games. Five Rings is quite a niche game. It's very, very punishing to play, especially over long tournaments.
Yeah.
So that's I mean, some players are going to stick with the game and they're going to be fanatical about the game because Five Rings gives you something that really no other game gives you at the moment. It presents just an enormous challenge. Like it's a genuine challenge to play a full tournament of Five Rings. So some players are going to stick fanatically with that. Other players are going to move on. So I do think there will be quite a drop in this year. Which is a shame, but that's fine. It's just the life cycle of games. But that said, there's a ton to be excited about. There's the Elemental Championships. There are Kotes. There are clan packs for every clan. It's like 2019 looks like it's going to be an absolute bonanza for Five Rings players.
The release cycle is super crazy, and we're moving away from the 6-pack in 6 weeks, and we're going back to weekly release or monthly releases.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of it. I think with Children of the Empire releasing, fingers crossed, once that's done, every clan will have at least two very distinct archetypes to play. And once that's done, then you can go back to just dripping cards out and altering the environment a little bit once a month.
The changes that recently got pushed through, presumably following feedback, I think have been really positive in two regards. One, possibly three. One, it's a great change. Two, they took on feedback from the players. And three, it was a relatively quick turnaround. I mean, they seem to have got that new setup in place quickly. And they have brought it in for Phoenix and they brought it in for Cork. I think, if they'd managed to do it with just Cascade and then hadn't fed it down to the European TO, that might have been a problem, or vice versa, obviously. Asmodee OP are managing to work two sides, two different continents in sync, which I think is really great. And another thing, we have the first event that is going to be legal for Children of the Empire, as far as I'm aware, is actually the Toronto event. So that is going to be Canada's first Kotai. People may not be familiar, but Canada did not get a Kotai last year, and they ran their own unofficial event. And the content that they streamed out of that was super professional. There was a lot of good games. I think I remember seeing Gunnar on the stream at some point playing some super interesting Dragon deck that I don't think really kind of got out there. Point being, they've got a really strong community. They seem to have a really strong community up there in Canada, and we should be able to see some pretty good content come out once that event happens.
Yeah, it was Canadians just making a polite but firm point. Canadians do. So no, absolutely fully deserved. I mean, it boggles the mind actually that Canada didn't get a Kotai last year. So I'm thrilled they're getting one this year.
The goal from here on out, I think, is going to be try to get an episode up every second Thursday. So that is going to be my stated goal. we'll see how that works out for everyone. It might just be a case of me running an episode by myself, which I'm totally happy to do. At some point, I might drag my wife, Meg, who also plays Alpha 4 on and off in. She's an avid Fox player who is having to play Phoenix at the moment, despite her best instincts. We did have a quick review over Imperial Advisor to see what we were doing right and what we were doing wrong. A couple of the things that I think came out were that the meta checks are definitely something the players are interested in. The majority of our content is coming in from that, specifically the Irish Kotai. Partially, I think, because we managed to get a lot of the deck lists for that particular event. Obviously, we're going to be there for the Irish Kotai in Cork at the end of this month. It is unfortunately going to be the pre-children meta, unlike the last year where we were just kind of coming into a fresh meta. But we'll pick up as much as we can on that, and we'll bring down some recording equipment, and we'll see if we can get some interviews with some of the people down there. WarpCon is always a fun time. The Phoenix Clan Pack was also well received. We never got round to doing the Scorpion Clan Pack. I doubt we're going to get to. We do on the YouTube channel tend to get pretty good reception for the clan packs we do, and I think with them going to weekly, or with monthly rather than weekly, we might be able to handle that. I think the elemental cycle was rough on us.
Oh, brutal!
Now,
it was when you hit. It was about pack 4 was the absolute nadir every time. It was like Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
but the drugs really took hold.
Oh, if only the drugs had taken hold. No, that was when you're once again staring at a screen with 20 fecking cards to review, and you've got at least 2 more to do. Oh no, it was the pits.
The Disciples of the Void Phoenix pack had 2.6 thousand views, which was impressive. We have 1,400 plus subscribers. We did 29 videos in 2018, and we're going to be adding more to that. Oh yeah, there was a couple of other interesting articles that I thought were notable. So one of the really popular articles was the state of the game, which was, I earlier mentioned, by Akodo Hato, which got 5,500 reads. It was a pretty in-depth look at what the game is like, and could you predict the future, essentially. And looking back on it, he did a really good job. So SoundCloud, we're pretty consistently getting about 800 people listening, or at least downloads. Although the last 2 episodes were 600, so we need to push that back up again. But yeah, we seem to be doing basically 3 different sources. We're doing a website that specializes on deck lists and tournaments. We're doing a YouTube channel that is focused on doing card reviews. And the Crane deck build notably got a lot of interest last year, so we might have a look and see if more sit-downs and talking about actually building decks is something that we should do. Although, if we don't get round to it, Chris Podorf's channel is totally worth checking out for that, because he does a lot of those. Oh yeah, so we also do a podcast, which we ramble about stuff a lot. So yeah, we seem to be running basically 3 almost separate and independent media sources. We're going to try get into a bit more of a consistent every second Thursday something up on YouTube. We are currently working on the Children of the Empire pack.
Who do we bug for preview, actually?
That's a good point.
Oh, I don't know. They've forgotten us again.
They've absolutely forgotten us again.
I think we were top of the list last time, so I think we're right back down to the bottom.
So that works. Okay.
Like bloody Troll 5 Ors releasing the previews.
Oh, did you see what they did again?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, they're Troll 5 Or. This is their bag. This is their unique brand.
Yeah. I guess we should expect it by now. All right. Well, fingers crossed. We'll get some more previews, and if we do, we'll get it out to people as soon as we can. We are gonna get on some more regular content, so we'll make sure to have something every second Thursday at 7 p.m. GMT, and obviously keep an eye on the website, and we will have kind of regular articles. If you are someone who does write things, feel free to contact us. definitely are interested in getting things up. If you are going to be at the Cork Kotai, come say hi. Because it is absolutely wonderful to meet real life people rather than just shouting into the void. And if you've any suggestions on content or material that we could cover that would improve your gaming experience, please do tell us. I'm going to take the moment to pimp some of the recent content that we've been putting out, which is focused on new players. So we have a introduction to L5R. We have a which are the first 3 packs to buy. So how to build your first deck. I think that's me finished rambling. Anything that you guys want to add?
No, just thanks for reading and
for listening, guys. Have a great week, great year, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Have a good one. Bye.
Yeah,
Bye.
absolutely. Take care, everybody. Bye.